I'm Elizabeth Bowden, and I'm representing Yale University Library, and we'll talk to you today about the Emil Project. Emil is one of many projects from a day where we had to have an acronym for everything that we did in the library. I think the tradition continues. So Emil stands for Arabic and Middle Eastern Electronic Library, even though I protested at the time that electronic library was already outdated. There it was. It's Emil. This screen is fairly bland, as you can see, but we'll go through easily the history behind Emil so that I can talk to you about our 3 points: development, cooperation, and sustainability. In particular, in sustainability, technical, financial, and human. Human sustainability in particular, because I recently retired. So what do you do when nobody's there? And what happens in your planning? Or do you even plan with that in mind? So looking at the available materials here, the first listing is gazettes, next is journals, third option is manuscripts, and fourth is references. It gives you basically a history of the project. We started with a grant from the Department of Education in 2005 from the TICFIA program, Technical Innovation for Consolidated Foreign Information Access, a long acronym, long explanation. It merely meant that the Department of Education sponsored making foreign information accessible to academics in the US. Bring the information in so that academics have a better chance of understanding what was going on in their field. So by definition, we were already in the cooperation area, and by definition, we were already in the technical area as well. That grant started in 2005, as I mentioned, and we started in with partners in Egypt, Germany, and in the Netherlands. So the Bibliotheca Alexandrina in Egypt, the University of Halle in Germany, and Brill Publishers in the Netherlands, who cooperated with us from the get-go. We began with academic journals. Big deal. We thought academic journals would be easy to get copyright, and we were wrong. They were just as difficult to get copyright as any other kind of journal. And why journals? We thought, well, that might be easier to manage in terms of extents and difficulties, but the complication in our case, the intentional complication, is that the journals were published in Arabic. So the technical challenge in the beginning of the project was digitization of Arabic text and doing OCR on Arabic text. At the time, Bibliotheca Alexandrina was the way that we learned about accomplishing this goal, and we brought it in from the Egyptian perspective of many hands help the work to the American perspective where many hands cost too much. So we had to solve the financial challenge from the beginning of the project to exploit software as much as we could to allow for the OCR of Arabic text. We also worked with several outsourcers to manage the digitization. Approximately 80% of our work was outsourced. We kept 20% in to increase experience within the library complex, but also for very special works. As we went through, we repeated a new grant in 2009 with the Department of Education. We also had a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, and that's when we were able to expand not just the first selection of journals from the Middle East, but we focused on journals from Iraq. And our motivation was that Iraqi scholars could not find their own journals because of the destruction of the Iraq War. So here we had digitized Iraqi journals on archaeology, history, language and linguistics, and they were freely available to everybody. Another NEH grant was in conjunction with JISC in the UK, and our partner was SOAS in London. And for that third one, we expanded past journals into manuscripts, manuscript catalogs, and dictionaries. We wanted an academic portal for scholars. I'm a medievalist by training. If I am working with a manuscript, I want a profound dictionary next to me, and I want to see many different items together, the journals as well as the manuscript that I'm studying. So that was the intent on the technical level, is to provide that one place to go. And if we look at, nope, not that one. Sorry, folks. This next one, you can see the tabs. As we moved from one granted project to another, we began to expand the tabs, focusing on connectivity to our partners at Hala and at Brill, but also doing an OAI harvester and bringing in the digitization that we were doing in-house. As you can see, it's still fairly bland in presentation, but the connectivity underneath it was expanding, and also the format of the material that we were digitizing was expanding out for the benefit of the scholars. Here's an example of connectivity to Hala. They already had the Middle East Virtual Library, so they had done some other open access materials and had created a very helpful catalog of information for scholars in Europe. And by our incorporating Hala's catalog into our repository, we then opened up more information for scholars in Middle Eastern studies. So, technically, things are going along. We're adding complexity, not only in the infrastructure, but in the content being provided, and in the connectivity to other sources as well. But what comes along? Technically, inside the library, things are moving along. We're going from where we started in 2005 with PHP, MySQL, and Fedora on a Linux box. All of a sudden, we're moving along, and we have to talk to our systems programmers to say, yeah, we can't do Linux anymore because central IT or library IT wants to do it differently. So we have to port things over to new systems. We introduced a Solar Index at the same time to expand searchability, and we worked with the idea of progressing forward. So integrating what we had done as a siloed project, much like at Harvard, how could we expand that out and become part of the general digital collections look and feel and be one big happy family? This front page is now a very different color palette. There's a different presentation. There's more history provided first off. There's connectivity to the funding sources as well to give proper credit to those who helped us, and a different presentation too in the searchability of the repository, now that this is with a part of a Hydra head in a very complex and extensible system at the library. So, all good. The big question is, there is value to the access of this information. It has helped Middle Eastern scholars. It has helped both the entering undergraduate as well as the senior faculty. We designed it for that purpose. So what? What's the question now? How do we manage that value of access to the costs involved? So let's switch a little bit to sustainability. In the technical case, a Linux box is not a Dell server. When we added manuscripts, what are we going to do? Did we want to get into the JPEG 2000 TIFF debate, or how did we want to manage that? So we went with a Jitoka server. We keep things in TIFF, we serve them up as JPEG 2000, so you can manipulate the manuscript display and zoom in as you would need to see detail in a manuscript. Financial sustainability, well, 2005 is when we got the first grant, another grant in 2009 from the Department of Education. 2009, it was the same year that TICFIA, the program that funded us, celebrated its 50th anniversary. They were as old as the Fulbright program. In 2011, however, Congressman Paul Ryan, currently Speaker of the House, led the decision to stop the TICFIA program. So it wasn't a reduction of award, the award was stopped. At the same time, we had an NEH grant, we had the joint NEH-JISC grant, so we could complete the goals we had set, but I found myself in an uncomfortable position of having to lay off staff. We had to seriously review our priorities to see what must we complete in order to be responsible and how could we do it. A little bit of invention here and there, and things worked out okay. But what's that responsibility level? We heard this morning in the keynote speech that consistency is one of the persuasion techniques. So if you say to somebody, will you fund this project? And they say, I do, just like in a marriage, you don't expect to go into the project waiting for the divorce papers. So you, in your project planning, in your cooperation with other partners, you have to build in that flexibility to say what's going to happen next. And in the human sustainability, we lost 4 experienced, well-trained workers who could do Arabic OCR with their eyes closed. That's hard to replace. How do you translate that? Fortunately, at the library, Yale embraced Emil, embraced all of the other projects that were under the umbrella of Emil, and now gradually we have gone from the development stage, the cooperation stage, the financial sustainability, and today it's under the umbrella of digital collections at Yale University Library. However, during the course of our time, we were giving talks, we were holding workshops to pass on what we learned about Arabic OCR, what we learned about the Fedora repository, and how it managed a Solar index. How did Solar indices work with Arabic text and Unicode and any other kind of complication you can imagine when that kind of mix of text is involved. So the sustainability of experience is part of that human sustainability. So what I'd like to push out to you folks as we continue our panel this morning, how can we manage the costs in terms of the value that our projects provide? Does this come down to a new kind of ownership? Is cooperation, does it morph into a new type of ownership? And how, with the current inconsistencies in government, how can we leap over that challenge and go forward to continue to innovate within the library and the university sphere for the benefit of scholars and publishers alike? Thanks very much.